Well, greetings to you. I just like to muse a bit again, if I may, on the historical associations that we have with form of isms. Isms, as in feudalism, uh, mercantilism, fascism, communism, and what we're drifting into now, which seems to be globalism. And after that, maybe I've heard the expression, technical feudalism, which is really run by the half a dozen very big companies on the planet. And I think perhaps some of them are worth a little bit of observation. And I'm not going to give you a history lesson. You don't need one from me, probably. But I do want to talk about where we are just at the moment, because it seems to me that since we've abandoned what is really a free press, the free press has gone, certainly in Europe, it's gone, and we're not really getting the kind of examination of the political system in which we're living. And this has been going on, in my view, for around about a decade and a half, as we morph into other things. Now, it's possible that Trump has put an end to this kind of globalism, and we don't know. It's far too early to say. But what we're dealing with Starmer and his ilk, and what we're dealing with Sunak before him and his ilk, was globalism, and their love of globalism, their hatred of nationalism, or certainly living in a sovereign state and institutions. So we've seen them degraded. They've been totally and utterly degraded, and they're being degraded now. The principles of English law, for example, disappeared under Starmer, and he was roasted for it, quite rightly, in Washington by Vance. And he doesn't seem to understand, because he's a sociopath, he doesn't seem to understand who he is. He has no self-awareness at all. And this is the problem that we have. And he's not called to book by the political class, or indeed the press or the media. So this is the thing. So let me just give you a few pointers on this. Why does he and his predecessors behave like they do? First of all, and I've mentioned this before, but it's worth repeating, let's have a look at the concept of the inheritance tax on farms. And the pretense that it will only affect a few farmers, which is endorsed by mainstream media and the people like Martin Lewis and other people who claim to be experts in financial matters, who clearly aren't, utterly hopeless, no idea, that it will only affect a few farms or a few farmers. Well, of course, that's absolutely ludicrous. Farmers, as we all know, are asset rich, or certainly asset well-to-do, but cash strapped. And so if the idea of passing a family farm down to son or to daughter, and I've mentioned this before, excuse me mentioning it again, is nothing to do with raising taxation. They are not after tax. They're not after tax revenue. They do not want ordinary people to own land or own farms. That is, they can't control it. They want to control food supply. They want to control the land. So if people have to sell up their farms and they leave the family and the family have to go away from farming, who will step in? Well, the BlackRock, Vanguard, and Bill Gates, so on and so forth. And I've mentioned this before, and I make no apology for saying it again. So that's the one thing. They do not want, any more than Stalin did, smallholders or small farmers, or indeed any kind of farmers in the private sector. So in will walk BlackRock and so on and so forth. That's one of the problems that we're going to have. But it's the same with education. They must control education. They have to go on purveying fake science in the classroom. And they can only do that if they can get the children into the classroom themselves. So if it's state education, they can do that. So they need to drive people out of the private sector. And that VAT on school fees is going to do that very successfully. They haven't even thought through where they're going to put the kids that have to leave. But that's neither here nor there. They don't care. And you'll see the ratchet tighten on home education. That's something else. They can't have any thought process or financial process which isn't controlled directly by the state. And they almost make no apology for it. That's the way it's going. Now, what we've got to understand, and what the media have got to understand, and perhaps visiting Republican Americans need to understand, is when we talk of things about energy policy and everybody is looking, saying, how on earth could we be so badly wrong on this? How on earth could we have in Great Britain the most expensive electricity in the world, quite deliberately with this net zero policy? It's utter ludicrous madness, and the whole world looks on and thinks we've gone completely mad. And of course, China and India and various other big manufacturing countries rely on coal or natural gas, so on and so forth. And we're getting rid of all these things. You can't even have a log burner in your front room. And I can see Drax out of the window virtually here, which burns wood pellets from the other side of the world. So everybody goes, this is mad. Why are they mad? They're not mad. Okay, the Chancellor of the Exchequer is pretty mad, and a lot of the front bench are mad. But Starmer isn't mad. This is all quite deliberate. Make no mistake. He is a globalist stroke communist and has been since he was a teenager. And that's now how on earth he's managed to get himself into number 10 Downing Street, and he's now putting that into practice. So there's no point in the press or visiting financial economists. So they're saying, my goodness me, is he mad? Is this government completely mad? They're not mad. This is all quite deliberate, which is why you can be an absolute thug if you remember the Labour Party and walk away from court, walk out of a court after a savage attack on one of your own constituencies. But if you say hurty words or anything like that, you go to prison maybe for a year, if not more, which there's no shortage of examples of that. And that's something that Vance was actually saying. Vance was actually making the point when he was in Munich, and he was making that point again when he saw face-to-face Starmer, saying that, we don't want to be really associated with a country which is now turning into 1950s East Germany with the Stasi and all the rest of it. So this is the way it's going. But we've got to stop, and I include Reform in this, who aren't making the point strongly enough. They're all saying seem to be saying, their spokesman, oh, it's incompetence, it's stupidity, and they're all nutcases. No, wakey. This is not incompetence or stupidity. This is a model that they are going through to get the tail end of globalism. We are on the tail end of globalism. And I think it could turn round, and I think it will turn round, and we are on the end of it. But it might not turn round in my lifetime. I don't know, especially in Europe. But let's understand it for what it is. Let's understand it for what it is. It isn't stupidity, incompetence. It is a deliberate attempt to degrade our national status, our national institutions, and get rid of the indigenous population by massive immigration coming in so that we'll soon be a minority in our own country. And this we have seen before in this country. If you go back to the ancient Britons, the Anglo-Saxons, the Jutes, the Normans, so on and so forth, we have seen it before. And that is the direction we're going. Now, we can stop it if we understand it, but we've got to understand it. So don't ever let people get away by telling you it's incompetence or stupidity. It's a grand design. Know it for what it is. As most of you know, my work is very heavily independently research-based, and I get my information from all over the world. It would help if you press the subscribe button and the little bell next to it, because the more subscribers I have, the more likely it is that international independent research institutes will share their material with me. It's most helpful, and then of course I automatically share it with you. So surprise, won't cost you anything. Thank you very much.